What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Stick Talk podcast. We're here with our good friend Kyle from HireUA. And I got this wrong last time, so if you're confused, I'm also confused, but this is episode 15, so welcome back, and let's dive in. Welcome to the show, Kyle.
Thanks for having me, boys. Tampa's cool.
Yeah, dude. I heard you had a little rocky start to the trip, but we're here, we're drinking, we're smoking, and we're going to have some fun today. So for those that don't know you, like you said, you're basically Kyle from HireUA. So a lot of guys in the Twitter space that watch our podcast have definitely seen you or your ads around the space. So kind of just walk us through a little bit about who you are, where you grew up, and what we were like as a kid, and kind of how that led to where you're at today.
Yeah, I grew up in California. I graduated college back in 2012. God, I'm freaking old now. And pretty much a year or so into that, I realized, like, I do not want to be doing the whole corporate job. And I took my first trip to Eastern Europe, to Poland. And within 10 minutes of walking to a club in Poland that first night, I just said to myself, I can never go back. And so 2 years later, put a plan in place, started saving money, and I took a one-way ticket to Poland. And basically never came back until the war in Ukraine started last year. So
Wait, so you walked into a club, you said? Like a nightclub?
Yeah, no, I was in this small Polish city called Wrocław, and I mean, just going out, I met a buddy there from England, and I just walked into that club, looked around, and said, America is not the place to be. I have to come here.
What did you see that made you say that?
Yeah.
You know, pretty girls and cheap vodka. That's really what it came down to. Obviously, I was 22 at the time, but that was April 2014. And I just knew, like, something has to change. I quit my job. I got promoted to basically another company, took a huge step up, and I walked away from that job, making almost 6 figures a year, 23 years old.
What was that job?
Engineer. Yep. So basically, I would take high-end support tickets for Hitachi, basically data systems, big racks, big data centers, and it would be stuff like, at the highest level, like Wells Fargo would call and be like, our ATMs are down in this entire state. And then it was up to me to either fix it if I could or get it to the people in Japan who could actually, who'd build the machines. So then I went to a government think tank that had Hitachi equipment, and I just hated that job. So much bureaucracy. Like, you want to make a 5-minute change to a server, it's 5 months of meetings. And so I took another trip. I went to Budapest. This time I went for 2 weeks with a couple friends from LA. And we actually just lived there. Like, okay, we're going to live here for 2 weeks. And, by live, I mean, we stayed out till 6 a.m. every day and did all sorts of degenerate things. But
Quick question. Did you guys also feel like you just weren't hungover at all, no matter how much you drank over there?
I mean, we would stay out till 6 a.m. and then sleep till 4 p.m. So
we just found it in Portugal. How crazy was it, Christian, when you drink there? It's just, I don't know if they put something in the vodka here or just liquor in general. I feel like the hangovers are way less.
It's because there's last call here. So when you're going till 6 a.m., subconsciously, like, you've got to kind of take it easy. Because in Portugal, I don't know I've never been there, but in Spain, like, you don't get started till 2 a.m., right? So I'm imagining Portugal's probably the same.
It was the same.
Yeah. So, like, in California, when the last call's at 1:30, everyone's just slamming it, trying to get it all in. And in Europe, it's just, I don't want to say it's, like, healthier, but it's a little more paced, and you kind of take it easier when you're staying out till 5 or 6 a.m.
Yeah, that's a good point. But I cut you off. You were in Budapest.
Yeah, I was in Budapest, and that pretty much cemented everything. So 1 year later, I'd saved 20 grand. I had a little blog at the time that was making maybe $500,000 a month, and I bought a one-way ticket.
$500,000 a month?
No, 500 to 1,000.
Oh,
like 3 and 4 digits, not 500 grand.
I was gonna say.
It's like, damn, what happened?
Yeah, and I pretty much just had this whole mindset of, I got a year and a half of expenses. If I make absolutely nothing, then I'll go back to the job, but I'm gonna make it work, and I made it work.
So you dropped a bomb on us right before we started. You said your last name isn't Trouble.
No,
and
it's
we
not.
all thought it was.
You weren't supposed to say that.
You got to tell us the story. Where did that come from? Why
My
did you
first
become
blog, which was in the dating niche, like, I was something I was not good at. I was not good with chicks in college. And one day I, like, found the right information, and just the light bulb went off. And then all of a sudden I got good with girls, right? So then I'm like, I'm going to start writing about this too, because it changed my life, and I'm going to start writing about it. And of course, the first thing in my mind was, I'd lose my job, my family would hate me, and everything would fall apart if anyone found this blog. So the blog was called This Blog Will Get Me in Trouble.wordpress.com. That eventually changed to ThisIsTrouble.com, which at one point was doing like 2 million views a year, and then ended up just being Kyle Trouble, and it's kind of stuck ever since.
Is that still going, or did you shut it down?
Those are little like affiliate marketing sites that get now maybe like 500 hits a day and makes a little bit of money here and there. But that was kind of how I got started. And then from there, I started building all these little affiliate niche sites. So the dating sphere, the supplement sphere, I was basically pimping out, dating subscriptions. So someone would go Google, Eastern European girls, for example. They'd find that, and then they'd go sign up for a dating subscription. And that was probably the most passive income I've ever made in my life. But that's a tough game. Like that's SEO. You got Google against you. You got people ripping you off left and right. That was not a sustainable business for the long term.
Interesting. So there's a gap there, right? So you moved out to Poland, you went to Budapest, and then there's a gap between starting in entrepreneurship and then moving to Ukraine. So what?
No. So I moved to Poland. I was just going to be a digital nomad for a few years. But then Ukraine was the second place I went. Really dug it. Kind of kept going back. Met a girl, of course, most stereotypical thing ever. Kept going back, and then built the niche websites. Had the blog that was, still going and going. After that, of course, I started doing biz ops. I'm like, okay, I'm making 20 grand passively from these. I can now teach someone how to do this. So I made a course. I did consulting. I did like a high ticket offer where it was basically, I'll build your site. We'll do the keywords, first 100 keywords, first 10 posts. We'll do the design. Sold that on live webinars. Got into an olive oil company, which is there on the table, from a reader who said, I have a farm in Croatia. Like, I need your help marketing. So I partnered with Martin, and that's there. And then settled in Ukraine, bought property, and then started HireUA.
Dude,
so that's the last 10 years, almost.
Where was like the seed of like entrepreneurship planted? Because you started with engineering, which is like a very like structural position, 9 to 5. Obviously, operations focused too, which might be why you're very good with operations and like HireUA. So that might have something to do with it. But like, where did entrepreneurship come into the fold? Because you're talking about blogs, you're talking about high ticket coaching, you're talking about starting an olive oil brand. Like, there's all these different business models in there. Like, where did that all come from?
I have no idea. Just a hatred of bureaucracy in like corporate America, I think. Because there's no one else in my family who's ever been an entrepreneur, started a business. It was that government think tank job with so much bullshit and nonsense. It just made me hate everything about it. And to me, it was always like, I was always a high performer, right? So I'm like, if I can take 5 times as many cases as everybody else and I can do it in 4 hours, like, why do I have to sit here for 8 hours with everybody?
Yeah.
And then the company started getting very, how would you call that? Effort, right? So participation trophies, like where I wasn't getting employee of the month anymore. It was the person because it was just their turn. And I just knew, like, this isn't for me.
Yeah, I feel like, how big of a lifestyle change was going to Poland and Budapest compared to the States? Like, is it more laid back? Are people more relaxed there? Like, I know when I went to Portugal, people would get off of work and just sit at like the cafe on the corner for like 4 hours and talk.
It's a lot more low key.
Yeah.
Yeah. The big difference is just the general health. Like, there's a lot of stuff in the food here that is certainly not allowed in Europe. The walking, you kind of just walk everywhere. Like, I've never owned a car out there, never had a need for it. Here, the hustle culture is a little better. Like, you tend to work harder. It's also because it's a little bit more expensive. I think that plays into it as well. But definitely the European way of lifestyle is quite a bit different and something that I personally have come to really prefer over the last few years.
So was there like a mentor, or like, where did you learn all this stuff?
Myself, man, just figuring it all out as I go. I had a mentor that got me the first job at Hitachi. That was very instrumental in that. But after that, no one really. Just figured it out. Of course, made connections along the way. There's been lots of people that have helped me, obviously, but I can't really pinpoint like one specific person that was solved it all for me, for sure.
Super interesting. Yeah, because and we have a lot of guests on the podcast that actually like have had success in the dating niche, and then there's also a common thread between like working at a corporate job and realizing that like your output is so much higher than everyone else's, but your earnings are capped. Yep. And so that's like the main motivator to go out and do your own thing. I guess like you mentioned your parents and that was kind of like a fear of making that transition. Mm-hmm. Like, what was that like? Was that tough in the beginning, or?
I just made the decision, and I wouldn't say they disproved. Like, they've always supported me. I can't say anything wrong about them at all in any way, but definitely there was a little bit of shock. My dad was an engineer as well, so I kind of went down a very similar path. And then I just pretty much called them. I can even remember the day. It was December 17th, 2015, and I was about to go home for Christmas just to go visit. And I just got on the phone, put me on speaker, and said, Mom and Dad, I just got back from Colombia. I met a few people there that are making money online. I'm making as much as them. I am going to be quitting my job, and that's going to be effective mid-February, and I'm booking a ticket for April. And then I said, like, can I stay with you for 6 weeks while I, like, sort my shit out? And they're like, yeah, okay. And that was it. I cut the conversation off. I said, if you have questions, you can ask me in person next week.
That must have been an awkward Christmas dinner.
No, it was fine. No, they already come to peace with it, man.
Yeah,
They knew I wasn't going to be happy, and they wanted me to be happy. So, what are they going to do?
That's sick, though. And you were called a specific day
Yeah,
and a phone
that was a
call and
specific-
everything,
yep.
so it had to be super important for you. They must be super proud where you're at now, too.
Yeah, no, it's now they look at it and they're like, yeah, okay, he obviously made the right
They're like, yo,
decision.
send me
right?
more
You know?
olive oil. Send me some olive oil.
One thing I think we should explain to the audience is just the business model of HireUA, because it's so simple, which is why it works so well. And I personally think it's genius. So if you could just kind of talk to them about what HireUA is, what you guys do, and just kind of like introduce that whole idea to the audience.
Yeah, so we basically are. I hate the term recruiting. I think it's just kind of so sleazy and dirty. But we place really good high-level Ukrainian people into mostly American businesses, also UK, Canada, anything that's a major English speaking. And we're basically trying to disrupt the whole traditional Filipino Indian market because it's not that much more expensive, but definitely a lot of people found the talent level and the just overall analytics and just the way that people are willing to take ownership of stuff is a lot higher than the traditional places. So basically, you guys have been through the process at Knowledge X, and if you say, like, we're ready to hire someone, we write the job description, we set up all the interviews, we screen the candidates, and then you typically are getting 5 interviews in 5 days, and after that, we handle all the payments on the back end. So
the model makes perfect sense because you're getting talented people, you're able to pay them less than you'd have to pay somebody here. Obviously, there's no benefits or things that you'd have to do with like a regular W-2 employee. So I guess my question is, how did you go about building up that talent pool of these Ukrainian people that were hungry to get these, American, UK, English-speaking roles?
Well, it started out when I hired Kate, who's now my senior technical recruiter, and I hired her as an assistant in Kiev. And I was just like, within a week, I'm like, this girl's just sharp. Like, this is a step above what I've had before when I've hired abroad. And it was like, oh, there might be something there. So as far as how we do it, it's really, I don't do anything anymore. on that
Christian's
end.
laughing.
What are you laughing at?
Hired abroad, as in like foreign, not. I think he thought you meant like hired abroad. Like,
I knew what you meant, but I just laughed at the way.
Okay, but Kate's an A player.
Yep.
A player abroad.
So yeah, I mean, that's really it. It's just a higher level of talent. And of course, the way I look at it too is like everybody's winning. Because in America, right, you can pay top shelf dollars and you can get someone pretty good. But a lot of times you're still like, if you're paying someone an average salary, it's an average person and they're just kind of showing up. Whereas this is a really good job for someone over there, like an amazing job. So they're more likely to be motivated and show up and really perform at a high level. And then of course you're paying like 80% less than you would a mediocre person here. So, the company wins. Small businesses have been just absolutely destroyed for the last few years. It's just hard out there. It's hard to hire good people. So the company wins, the employee wins, and of course, I win as well. So everybody wins.
So here come like all the activists of like, oh, why are you paying these people less? Like, that's not a sustainable living. Like, you've seen it, I'm sure, on social media and with hiring like talent abroad, like
Slave labor.
Yeah, slave labor. Like,
you're
so
a
like, what do you
colonist, yeah.
like? Dive a little deeper because obviously there's a misunderstanding for those people just not understanding like the economics on both sides of the equation. So if you're speaking to people that kind of second guess, like, yo, why are you paying such low like salaries to these types of people? Like, you've seen it, right? You've been in Ukraine. You've been in spending time with these people. Like, it's changed. Like, you've changed lives there.
Yeah, I mean, so I lived in Ukraine, and I lived in a very big central apartment. I would eat out probably at least half my meals and go out and party, tables, drop bottles once or twice a month. And it was almost impossible to spend more than $3,000 a month. Like, almost impossible. So when someone's going to make, like an average salary in all of Ukraine now is probably like $500 to $700 for a full-time job.
A month?
A month. So they're getting paid oftentimes almost double that. So it's everybody wins, right? They're getting a fantastic job. They're making way more than they need. And of course, I was living in a central apartment, renting it. Most people there are living in a smaller apartment on the outskirts. They don't want to be in the very center. So like their rent might be $150 a month. So if they're making $1,500 with a full-time job, they have 90% of their leftover disposable income. Right, and they're not eating out all the time like I was. They're not going to party all the time. So maybe they're only spending $500 a month, and they're saving 2/3 of their income. So when people ask that, I'm like, well, wouldn't you like to be able to save like 70% of your income? Like, wouldn't that be ideal? Don't you wish most Americans could do that? And people just don't understand the economics of it. They just don't at all.
Yeah.
What I think is super interesting about your case is a lot of people that do these staffing firms don't live in the place where their talent pool is. So, like, when you go out, were you just like really connected in the online space in Ukraine, like, or were you just actually going out and meeting people and getting them into your talent pool? I guess I would call it.
The biggest edge is that I lived there. I own property there. I have a Ukrainian wife, a Ukrainian child, and I speak some of the language. So if it was anybody else, there would be a lot of skepticism. But we have stuff that we do with the candidates that introduces that bridge, and as soon as it's introduced, that all that just typically goes out the door.
Where are you finding them?
The team takes care of it all, man.
At the
It's all
club.
totally outsourced. Yeah, no. There's so much skepticism. You have to have local language skills. You have to be in tune with the culture. Obviously, I'm connected there just in general with lawyers and the right people, but it is not, if you don't understand the people and how they work, it makes it really difficult to find the right people. So now the main thing has been me teaching my team how to bridge that gap. Like, here's how we work in the States. Here's what people are looking for. You have to find people that are open to the right mindset. So that comes then from me understanding Ukraine, and that comes from me instilling that with the team. Like, this is how we should act with the American companies on the other side.
Very interesting. And I guess should we just go into kind of world events and how Ukraine's been?
I have a
obviously-
question on like just like talent in general. And we were having this conversation with another kid in Klein Ascension, Cam, because he hires talent out of Peru, and very similar economics. Like the average salary there is like $200-300 a month, and so the economics make sense as well for Americans. And we were just talking about like I think it's more specific. The hospitality industry in America is like very like it's definitely dropped in quality, especially since COVID. Like, and everyone knows it. Like, you go out to a restaurant, you go out to like Chipotle or something.
I got 2 stories from the last 12
Yeah,
hours
exactly.
we can talk about. I mean,
and it's definitely a problem. And then we went to Portugal last October. I went to Dubai in November, and the customer service, the hospitality is unbelievable. Like, they're proud of their jobs. They're proud of their nationality in their country, and they show up way differently. And I think that has an effect on consumers.
Yeah.
And so maybe talk about like the difference between hiring, and it's not like American workers are bad or anything. It's just there's definitely a like foundational difference that it's starting to tip the scales. What would you say to that?
I mean, if you want to really go into it, I think there's a certain sense of like entitlement in America.
that was the exact
Let's
word I
not
was
beat
gonna
around the
use.
bush
Yep.
here, right? Like people, you know, I remember I went to college and I would talk to people like who were studying sociology, HR, basic bullshit, and they were expecting to make 6 figures right out of college. They just thought it was getting handed to them. And then they go out, and the reality was the market was going to give them like $35,000 a month. So now that's gotten even worse, and I think obviously social media's poured the gas on that, right? Everyone's like, oh, I got to go, you know, have a nice hotel and shoot YouTube videos, and it's just all inflated. So everyone thinks they deserve more than what they're actually worth. And this is where it gets very interesting for me, because obviously Ukraine's a former communist state, and we can go into kind of the geopolitics and what's going on now, but I see what people there grew up with. I see what my wife grew up with, what my in-laws are going through in their life and now, and it's like, holy crap, we have it good, and that is just human nature. If it's good, it's smooth, and if there's no struggle, I think people will create the struggle for themselves if there is no struggle. That's what we see in America now. Like, everyone's all outraged about all this little stuff, where in reality, if they actually had a real struggle in their life, they wouldn't have time to be outraged about that.
Yeah. Yeah, so I just wanted to dive into the current state of what's going on in Ukraine. Like, you said you were there when everything unfolded with Russia. Like, what was that all like? How did you get out?
So basically, we just found out my wife was pregnant with our first kid like 2 weeks before, and we were in Kiev in our apartment, and I remember just waking up one morning and she just shook me awake like, Kyle, you know, wake up, and the air raid sirens were going off, and I was just, you know, totally befuddled, totally confused, couldn't call anyone, the phones weren't working, and then basically was able to get out to the suburbs. You know, we were able to cross the bridges and get out to the suburbs where we thought like it'd be a little more secure, and then that night there was this tram in front of the apartment, and it was just this constant like click, 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 and then like a whoosh. And I just remember every time I heard that thing, it was like, you know, this is something coming in. And eventually, some sort of small plane or drone got shot out of the sky, and I mean the whole window just orange, the whole apartment shook. I mean, I thought it was like, you know, this could be it really. And it destroyed an apartment about half a mile away Like people died in it, and then the whole apartment, just ruined on the side. Wow. And after that, I was planning on waiting for the weekend because it was 12 hours to get out of the city. It was 4 a.m. and I said, get in the car, we're going. I took the wheel, past tanks on the street. And then by the time we got to the border, 5 miles away from the border, God, we got there, 16 hours later from leaving. And then it wasn't until another 2 days that we were able to get out and fight through. So basically waiting out in the cold, conserving gas, and then, basically it was 56 hours total from leaving the apartment in Kiev.
You were at the border and you just had to sit there and wait? Just because
you had to wait in the line of cars. People were fighting, blocking people. And then, of course, once you actually got to the front, you had to actually wait in the queue, for passport control.
And you own property there. You have a business there. You have business partners there. But your wife just told you she's pregnant a couple weeks ago or a month ago or whatever, and there's bombs going off. Is it just straight up survival instinct, leave everything behind, just get to the border as quick as possible?
I didn't sleep for days. And when that kicks in, that survival, it was just insane. It's 4 a.m., haven't slept, and I was able to go 56 more hours without even feeling tired. And then, of course, when I actually got to Poland, got into a hotel, of course, then it all just comes crashing down. It's just this giant, release of tension. But, yeah, that was kind of how it all started. So, yeah, obviously not something I'd wish anyone through. It was hell. It sucked, but it is what it is. And, yeah, obviously my whole life was there for the last 5 years and had worked hard to build all that. And, it is what it is, though, right? You have to most people at some point in their life have to start over again.
Yeah. Some less intense than that. But wow, yeah, I'm just trying to put myself in that situation. It's just absolutely insane. So the border in country then, you says Poland?
Yeah, we went through, I don't even remember what the border checkpoint was, but yeah, we went into Poland, and then, it's just chaos at that point. The whole world is stopped. The whole world's keeping an eye on this. And so you get through Poland, you get put, we're lucky, right? I make money online, fairly well off. We were able to just go get a hotel.
And where is the business at this point?
It's all in America for the most part.
No. I mean, don't have to talk revenue numbers, but how long have you been doing HireUA for? Are you making a pretty comfortable living at this point? How are things going?
It's to the point I don't even want to talk about raw numbers, but let's just say that I exited with a partnership in June or May, joined Client Ascension in June, and we're now at 7x what we were.
Yeah,
well over.
I know
you've
seen crazy growth, but so if you joined Client Ascension in June, when did you? Was that before or after you had left Ukraine?
I left in February, so
Gotcha.
after, a couple months after.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I changed the name. We used to just be Executive VA, and I changed the name. I knew. I was something has to change with this, so changed the name. It's kind of just taken off from there.
But back in February, you guys were still a little bit more earlier on, as I understand it.
Yeah, we were when I joined Client Ascension in June or whatever it was. I have no idea the actual date. We were somewhere $17,000 a month, give or take.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Okay. And I'm just, again, putting myself in your shoes, right? The war started, the last 72 hours, last week, whatever, is just absolute chaos. You're not sleeping. You're in survival mode. You cross the border. You get to a hotel. I just remember sitting comfortably in a mansion in Fort Lauderdale watching Fox News of seeing this all unfold and just not thinking really anything of it. So what was it like for you from your perspective, seeing the news and all the differing opinions and perspectives and stories? Was that frustrating, or how did you look at it from being inside of what happened?
I never thought it was going to happen. I really didn't think it was going to happen. But I think a couple days before I started to switch a little bit, this actually is maybe getting to the point it could happen. But from October to February, I laughed it off. I'm yep, this is just hysterics of the media. Nothing's going to actually happen. And of course I was wrong. And then, a couple days before I started to get this gut feeling this isn't feeling right anymore. Yeah. But it was just a little too late to really... Yeah, I had to be reactive. The time to be proactive was gone. A lot of my friends left. All the expats that lived there, that they'd just gone, and I had to be reactive at that point instead of proactive.
Yeah. So what was it when after the fact, after it started to happen, and social media was just absolutely blowing up, all the news channels?
I was getting crazy amounts of engagement. 'Cause I was on the ground. All I had to do was post a photo, and it would get several hundred likes. So that was kind of cool for a couple days. But then you get to the point where you're sitting out in the cold and you don't have service, and you're okay, this isn't really worth getting likes on my tweets for this. It's just sucks.
Yeah. Damn, dude. And the way that the media portrays it, what is your perspective on that?
On both sides are not innocent. My overall opinion, I'm not going to go too deep into this, but all politicians are just dirty, and it is what it is.
Well, something that you just said that I found interesting was like we just wrote it off as hysterics. We didn't think it was going to happen, but from what I understand, the origination of the war was pretty clear with them wanting to get into NATO and just kind of how that whole thing unfolded. So were there people before things really went south that were kind of like pushing like, yo, relax, you don't want to do this? Or was everybody kind of just like living in ignorance a little bit beforehand until it actually started?
I mean, on one hand, like if you look at how the U.S. has done things for the last couple decades, like we do start a lot of shit. Like no matter how you want to spin that, we start a lot of shit. At the end of the day, Russia also made the decision to go in and destroy a country and destroy a lot of lives in the process. So there is certainly a bit of imperialism, but you can't believe the propaganda on either side. Like on one hand, like men can't leave the country in Ukraine. So I have friends who are our age who cannot leave, who cannot find work, and who are sitting in the cold in their apartments with their children trying to survive. And to me, that is bullshit.
Yeah.
Like, if a politician is going to order you to not leave the country, then put that politician on the front line with a gun with their family, and then we can talk about making rules.
So what is it like there right now? Is it safe to return? Is it?
I won't go back. It's relatively safe. Like, I wouldn't say people are living in heavy discomfort at this point. The winter was pretty rough. A lot of power outages, a lot of heating wasn't working. But for the most part now, it's operational, it's sufficient. But, the exchange rate, for example, is like 30% lower than it used to be. So people just aren't making enough money to survive. They're just getting by. But this is where culturally it's very different. Like, people have actual savings there. Like, I would say most people are saving more money than your average American by far. And that's not even just a percentage. They actually are probably saving more dollars per month than your average person here. So they are not a country and a culture that is unprepared. They've lived through communism. They've lived through the USSR falling. They've lived through a lot of shit. So they're not just sitting there like, I'm triggered by this person on the internet. They have real problems.
And what's like the banking system like there? It's pretty stable?
No, you would never keep your money in a bank. It's preferable to keep your money under a cushion here than it is in a bank. Yeah, by far.
Yeah, because I think of like, we've talked about this too, but like it's not a war in Lebanon right now, but like the economics are very similar and like the banking system completely failed and similar cultures. Like people have savings. They've seen stuff like this happen before. They kind of know better at this point, and it's just like crazy to think.
Yeah, one of my best friends from Kiev is actually from Lebanon, and I think he's maxed out at like $2,000 a month of withdrawals. Like he's got probably 7 figures in the bank, and he can't take out more than $2,000 a month.
It's just not
like,
there.
He's just stuck. Yeah, it's just not there. They don't have it. So
it's crazy. Yeah, and like this whole conversation just kind of makes you think like how good we have it. Like going back to the original like cultural differences and how people show up in the hospitality industry, right?
Yeah.
I want to go a little bit more into like the origins of Selo. Is that how I say it? Yep. Selo Olive Oil. So it's a Croatian company or Croatian sourced olive oil. Yep, like, what was the decision behind that? Like, were you looking at all different parts of the world to source the olive oil, or was it Croatian?
No, my business partner on that, Martin, was a reader of my blog.
Oh, no way. The dating blog?
Yeah. Yeah. At that point, it was also like a travel blog to some extent, just living abroad, kind of building a business. And he just was like, I need help. And actually, he lived in Prague. I was living in Prague for like a year and a half, and he lived there. He had a normal job, and we just, we'd go out and have beers once a week. And it got to the point where he had this family farm in Croatia, and he was trying to bring it to market and wanted my help. So we partnered up, and then, what happened after that? He went back to Canada to actually receive the oil and start shipping it. I took a trip there at one point. I've been to the farm now.
I was going to say,
I've been out there. My family's been out there. And we bottled the first $1,000 bottles of that in his garage.
No way.
Like, I don't even want to go into how many regulations we probably broke for that. But I basically did like a live webinar for niche sites. And that was a bonus, was you get this physical product. And then we did an olive oil webinar. And all of a sudden we had like close to 1,000 bottles to fulfill.
An olive oil webinar?
Yeah, we did an olive oil webinar.
Like, what do you talk on? Like,
we just ripped on seed oils.
Oh,
like the whole thing was like, you're killing yourself with seed oils. Like, try this instead.
Based.
Yeah. But then also, like, at the time, I was doing niche site stuff, so affiliate marketing. So I was selling websites, prepackaged, all the keywords and everything. We kind of went into that briefly. And that was like an add-on. So this is like a very original high-ticket offer, like $2,000 for the site, and you also got a package of olive oil. And now, of course, you guys are now, you have your coaching program, which is a much higher number. But back in like 2018, like $2,000 was a lot for a coaching program. Like that was a very high ticket offer, and it did really, really well,
So
actually.
where does the majority of your olive oil traffic come from now? Like where are people?
Pretty much Twitter, like, based,
Esoteric.
esoteric, fitness Twitter.
No ads?
Seed oil. No. We can't run ads. Anytime we put oil, people think it's like CBD oil or all the algos, so we've been banned from pretty much every platform in regards to that.
And it's 100% e-commerce?
It's all online, yeah.
Gotcha.
I walked it. We tried like doing door to door. Like I went into olive oil and like boutique stores and we tried to sell it, but at the time the margin really just wasn't there. Like when we started, we sold a 750. It looked totally different than this, but we sold a 750 milliliter bottle and it was $70. And we went up to $100 at one point and called it, the $100 bottle of olive oil. And now it's 40 something for that, which is half a liter, and the margin's a lot better. But at the time starting out, when we were selling for $75, I mean, our cost to fulfill it was like 55.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And of course, it looks so simple, right? But that bottle comes from one place, the labels come from one place, the wrapper, the cork, they all are sourced differently. So that first one, we were shipping everything to the garage, and then we had a giant tub of oil, and we stayed up till like 3 a.m, and it was just like an assembly line. Like I'd put the bottle there, I'd slap the label on it, Martin would heat wrap the top, and then we'd drive it to the post office the next morning.
So is the oil the most expensive part of that, or?
Oh, but by far, it's the cheapest part by
cheapest
far.
part?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Damn, dude.
I'm not gonna go into the full numbers on
It's
that.
automated now though, like the whole fulfillment.
Somewhat, yeah. So basically now it goes in a giant tub from Croatia. It goes to a bottling facility in California. They bottle it, they label it, they take care of everything, and then it goes to the shipping facility, which is like a typical e-commerce shipping facility. Anyone can go make an account and ship them inventory, and they'll handle it from there.
Have you tried like influencer marketing for that?
Not really. I mean, it's just like I sold a lot of my steak back, and it's one of those things like it just is what
Just
it
like
is.
a passion
It's doing
project
well.
almost?
Yeah, it's totally just a passion project, but it's actually growing significantly. Like we had a great month in Black Friday this year.
It's good stuff too. Like we use it at our apartment.
you guys
It's
have
awesome. Yeah, I
gotta,
could definitely see like Soul Bra or like one of those type of accounts being a great affiliate for you guys.
Yeah, actually, I've never met. I think we're meeting up with him
Chris.
sometime this afternoon, Chris, but he loves it, and I don't even think he knows who I am because I'm very much the silent guy on that.
Yeah.
But I actually have a bottle. I'll bring it to him later today, and I don't even think he knows who I am, but it should be funny to see.
Yeah, dude.
Chris,
He
the OG.
loves that stuff.
When are you gonna branch off into making some wine?
I'd actually really like to do that at one point in my life. We've thought about lavender oil and a few other things that we could do in Croatia in that same region, but I wouldn't mind doing wine one day. We'll see.
Wine would be
But
good.
That'd be awesome.
Dude, they're so hard. Like
Yeah.
seriously, I can't sit here with a straight face and recommend, hey, you guys should go make a physical product like this.
Yeah.
It blows. Like it's a huge headache. It sucks.
We're sitting here like masterminding how we're gonna start a cigar brand, so maybe we'll reconsider.
Stop. Just don't even go there.
Nah, that'd be dope though. Stick Talk cigar brand.
Don't go there.
Distraction for now. Maybe maybe down the road though. When you have the luxury of doing a passion project, I feel like you should.
You should, but you still shouldn't. It'll still suck. Yeah.
Fair point.
I want to go more into like HireUA, and like obviously I'm like more operations focused on the business side, and so I have a lot of experience with like hiring and delegating and stuff like that. And I feel like every business owner, it's one of the key things that they struggle with is like letting go of certain parts of the business and certain responsibilities. And so like we could unpack a bunch of stuff here because there's a lot of questions that people have about hiring, a lot of intricacies. You did a masterclass in client ascension just a few weeks ago, which was awesome. But someone early on in the business, it's just them. They might be working with a partner, and they're thinking, when is the right time to hire? And they're just struggling with letting go of certain parts of the process. Like, what would you say to that person?
It's natural. It's normal. Everyone's going to struggle to let go of some stuff. Like, it's your business. It's your baby. Like, you're always going to care more than your employee. There's nothing you can do that's going to change that. You're always going to probably do a better job in most of the stuff they do. But if you actually want to grow your business and you want to get to the point where you're just big, you have to. You cannot do it all yourself. You cannot just keep working, 16-hour days indefinitely. There has to be a limit. So eventually you have to let control kind of hand over. And I think a lot of people do it out of desperation, which then they make the wrong hire, right? So a lot of people will go to like Upwork or they'll go to online jobs. And to me, it's the most insane mechanism because you post a job, you get 500 applicants, you put a stupid question right in the middle of the job application saying like, tell me your favorite pizza topping, right? And you hope that filters you down from 500 to 50. And then from 50, you look at their resumes, you sort through everything. And then after that, you hopefully get like 10 or 15. You say, send me a Loom video, and you try to get it down to 3. And then you interview the 3. And guess what? At that point, you're making a hire because you've done all this bullshit. There's no way you are not making a hire at that point. So then you hire the wrong person, and they can't do it. And that's expensive.
And so if I'm sitting here and I'm running a business and it's gotten to the point where I'm working like 12 hours a day and I'm doing decent revenue, I just know it's time to hire. Like, what's the process for figuring out who do I even need to hire for? Where do I hire? How do I hire? Like, what are some of the answers to these questions?
I think what you should usually do is try to audit your time, and you look at stuff like what is taking a lot of time and what do I hate doing. Like if you love, for example, inbox management, then if it's not at that point where it's taking a significant amount of your time, maybe that's not what you hire for first. Like I hate the day-to-day paperwork. I hate scheduling. So that's something like I want that off my plate personally. So I would be looking at like what takes a lot of time and what do I hate doing? And then I'd ask myself like, can it be automated? Because you know, computers do tend to be a little bit more reliable than humans, and there's always a very human element to a hire. There's always risk to it. There's always the chance that it just won't work out. So if it can't be automated, then can you delegate it? And that is how I would go about it. And that's what I tell people to go, how they should do it.
And what's your take on hiring for intangibles versus like skills?
It's all about the culture fit, man. Like
Yeah.
someone who's intelligent can learn anything, and if they're just the right fit, they'll make it work. The perfect example of this is my current operations manager, Valentina, who started off as my basic admin, like go through this list of Twitter profiles and tell me who to message, like based off of this criteria. And then we got so busy, I said, you want to try a little recruiting? And she's like, okay. So she tried recruiting. She did amazing at that to the point where I started training her, like go through all the channels of all the recruiters, approve, disapprove, go through everything. To now she's also like a CSM. Like she just handles her own placements. Like someone else does the scheduling, but she's the one who's like, hey, you know, client, what do you think about this person? Are you ready to move forward? Like, and that was in August. So she was a perfect example of the right person who was just ready to roll. And it's like, I can't give her more fast enough. I can't promote her fast enough. I can't give her raises fast enough. So that's a perfect example of it's totally about the cultural fit. Like,
Yeah.
It is.
And you say, so culture, right? Like when you're first starting a business or even in the earlier stages, like culture's the last thing you think about, right? Like you're just thinking, how can I generate more leads? How can I make more sales? How can I deliver good results? Because I just put myself like back in the day when we were starting a business and like you hear people talk about like, yo, what's your culture? Like you should have like a defined culture. And it's like, nah, it's bullshit. Like I just need to generate more leads and make more sales. And then obviously you get to the point where you're like, okay, culture is important. So like, how do you screen for culture? Because it's just like initially this big idea. Like, how do you actually ensure someone is a culture fit? Like, what are some of the practical things someone can do?
It's just gut and it's people. So for example, like our team will watch a sales call video, and then when they have their interviews with the person, they're trained like this is what would make this person be a good fit with this person. It's all about understanding people. Like it's like dating, you know. You know, like you guys know, you go on a date and you know, like in 30 seconds whether you could actually have a second date with this person, right? And then it's a matter of like, do I want to pursue this or do I want to just like end this as quick as possible? It's very similar. Like most people should just know intuitively. And as a business owner, you have to trust your gut. So do I think this person can do the job? And people overestimate. If you hire the right person, they should be able to learn the job fairly quickly. Like everyone's like, oh, it's going to take so much time. Like, no, it should take like a week at the most, a couple hours a day. For most basic jobs. And then, of course, do I actually like this person? Can I see them growing? Can I see myself enjoying talking to this person on a daily basis?
I feel like that's where a lot of business owners mess up is they'll not have the best screening process. They'll hire somebody and then they'll invest so much time trying to make them the right fit as opposed to just cutting ties, learning from the experience and moving on. So do you have any advice for people that are maybe a bit earlier on, just getting into the first, I guess, couple hires at their business and they're trying to figure out like, okay, how do I know when the right time is to cut ties with somebody?
I think the biggest problem is that people kind of overinflate their own egos and they say, I need a operations manager. And then you look at the task list, like I need them to set up emails. I need them to, tag important emails. I need them to, process paperwork, like repost my stuff from Twitter to LinkedIn. It's like, that's not an operations manager, man. That's like a basic admin, right? So cut the ego. Don't think just because you consider yourself to be a client success manager and an operations manager and whatever else, like you're not that important.
Yeah.
That's the reality of it. Like, you're not that special. You know, you're a one-person business doing everything. It doesn't mean you need an operations manager.
Yeah.
More than likely, someone can come in with very basic knowledge and do everything you need them to do. So that would be like my biggest thing as a business owner is let go of the ego and let go of the control and trust this person. Give them a chance. And what I really like to talk about a lot is kind of like a 3-tiered training system. So, for example, like let's say you're looking to make a hire in the next month or so, right? So you'd start making Loom videos. You'd start everything you do on a daily basis that you need to outsource. You Loom it and you say everything that's in your head. You put it on the microphone and you let Loom transcribe it. You give your new hire that. You say, watch this for 3 days. After that, you get on the call and you do it with them. So every day you set an hour, however long you need. You get on the call with them. You walk them through it. You go through everything. You speak everything that's in your head out onto the call and you record it. After that, you hand them the reins. Say, you do this now, and you have a lot of input. Like, you would interrupt them. You'd step in as needed. And then, like, the third week, or maybe it's only the third day, kind of depending how sophisticated it is, you say, I'm here if you need me, but I want you to do this job. I'm going to turn off my camera. I'm going to turn off my mic, and I'm not going to talk. So shut up and outsource, basically, at that point. And it's been stupidly effective for us. Like, people just get it after that. You've given them roughly 2 to 3, maybe 4 weeks, depending on how sophisticated the job is. And then, of course, it's all recorded. So the next hire, you have the person who you hired first do the same thing. Like, instead of you having to train the next person, they do it all. So that has been really effective for us, and we've been starting to implement it in other businesses too, our clients, and it has worked extremely well.
So that's along the lines of like employees turning into managers, right?
Dude, if you have the right person, they want to grow. Like, if you go to one person, you're like, yeah, like Valentina's a perfect example. Like, I taught her how to be a recruiter, and now she's got 3 people under her. And they're all doing fantastic. And she's, you know, it just works.
Yeah.
You teach someone, you give them the proper things. And that's the thing. People overestimate how much time it's going to take. It's like, I spent 30 minutes a day with her for 2.5 weeks to train her to be my operations manager. And now she does it at a level that I'm probably not even capable quite of doing.
Wow.
And she has now people under her doing the same thing that she was doing before. And it took me, you know, if you add it all up, it took me, what, maybe 7 hours of my time that I would have had to do it anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, I was doing it while I was doing the job I had to do anyway.
And that's the limiting belief too, like you mentioned early on, is like it's going to be very difficult to find someone that can come in and do as good a job as you can. But over time, if that person is just focusing on one thing, like if someone comes in and is just doing inbox management while you're doing all these other things in the business, over time, they're probably going to pass your skill level for that specific task or role, which is where it gets really exciting because then they can teach more people to do it and you're kind of out of the picture. So I just want to recap for people watching, like the 3 things you mentioned, the training system is if you're thinking to hire for someone in your business, you record Loom videos or different parts of the process and you just document how this role is specifically supposed to be done. The second thing is once you have that hire, you get on a call with them and you do it together, right? And you kind of guide them through it and say what, like basically them shadowing you. And then once you're comfortable enough, you have them on a call and you tell them to do it in front of you. You kind of turn your screen off, get out of the picture, say, I'm here if there's any emergencies. Otherwise, do it and show me that you're capable. And then you set them off from there.
And on top of that, you also have them ask questions and you say, write down all your questions. And then you put the answer in a document or a database.
Yep.
And you have them write notes about the main points. And then all of a sudden, every hire after that has that same role is just easier because there's this giant list of documentation and you don't have to do anything. And you know what? People are thrilled. Like if you've trained someone and they've done a good job to the point where we're hiring someone else and I want you to do it, like no one who's happy with their job is going to say no to that. They're like, oh, great. Like I'm being trusted. I get more responsibility. They get a sense of fulfillment. It's like, again, everybody wins.
Yeah.
And you don't have to do it. Like, you know, for example, we hired, 2 new recruiters since December, right? Like I know them. I like them. Do I have any clue how they work, what they're doing? No, but they're doing a great job. I'm like, oh, great, cool. Like they're doing great. I don't need to do anything. It all works.
Love it, dude. One of the stories that you've told in the hiring process or something you do during the hiring process, like during the interview process specifically, is obviously you ask screening questions, you get an idea for who they are, what their background is, and then you throw in like a little homework assignment or whatever. What do you refer to that
Fire
as?
drill.
Fire drill. So walk people through that and maybe tell the story because I think that's so cool.
So you shouldn't do this for like a basic position. It shouldn't be too harsh. But for example, a few months ago, I was trying to hire a high-level executive assistant because it was getting to the point where I was doing 5 sales calls a day, doing a lot of operational stuff, just absolutely stressed from sun up to sundown. So I was hiring an executive assistant, and the scenario was basically, we can go into this a little bit, but I'm moving to Italy with my family. And it was like, we are flying from California to Italy. We have a dog. We have a 6-month-old child. And I need to know our best routes. And there's some criteria, like the dog can only travel in the cabin on certain routes. So I said, we need to get here. Our preferred airlines would be KLM or Delta in business class, but anything will work. If we need to stay overnight somewhere, that's okay. But that needs to be accounted for, and we're willing to take trains once we're in Italy. And it was basically, here's the whole scenario written out. You have 10 minutes.
And that was on a Zoom call. Like
that was on a Zoom call, totally unaware. And I was not looking for someone to like solve all the problems because I already knew the best options. I'd already worked on this. It took me probably at least 5 to 10 hours to figure this all out. So the hope was, 1, willingness to do it. 2, not panic and come up with something. Doesn't matter how horrible it is, but you have to present something to me. And I said, I'm going to make a cup of coffee and hang out with my kid. I'll be back in 10 minutes. I set a timer. I didn't do that. I turned off the camera. I turned off the microphone and I watched them. And I was looking at their face. Like, are they freaking out? Or are they like, holy shit, this sucks, but I'm going to, do something. And that was like a big thing too, was they need to realize they're not going to solve that problem in 10 minutes, right? Like, it's an acceptance of like knowing when to cut your losses and just present something. And that works really well. We've used it for a couple other roles now. And it's like, you want to throw someone in, but you don't want them to fail, but you need to give them enough tools that they can actually come up with something reasonable. But we've done that now for CSMs, ops managers, and it's worked stupidly.
So did that person pass the test?
Several people did, and then of course I just picked the one who I thought was the best fit, and it was a fantastic hire for sure.
Yeah. And I was recently in a scenario where I was hiring for a super key role at Client Ascension, and we had, I think, like 7 applicants, 5 of which were like really, really good. And it got to the point where I'm like, I can only hire one of these guys, and I want to hire all 5 of them, and I can make a case for all 5 of them. How do I weed them out and make one really good hire out of this group? And you gave me some really good advice on that maybe the audience would like to hear.
I mean, so you have like 3 other partners with Client Ascension, right? So my first thought was like, okay, clarify. No, the first thing I said I think was like clarify the hours and expectations because I don't think you'd quite done that yet. So basically, try to hope that you can filter from 5 to 3. I don't know how effective was that actually. Did you?
No,
actually,
it didn't work. Okay, I sent him like a 20-minute Loom video. I'm like, this is the hours. It's super intense. Like I tried to downsell the opportunity as much as possible. Like this is how much the pay is. It's not that great. And all of them are like, perfect, I'm in. I'm like, dude. No.
So that didn't work. And then my next advice was, you guys are all busy. I know what it's like to be busy. You guys are all running multiple businesses. You're co-founders. So I said, get all of these people on a call with your other 3 partners and just see like if immediately someone's like, no, that's it. That's not it. So the hope was like try to whittle down to like 3 from that first mechanism. Obviously that didn't work. And then with your co-founders, try to whittle down again from 5 to I was hoping from there it'd be like 3 to 2.
Yeah.
But obviously that didn't work out. But it sounds like you guys made a hire, so hopefully
We'll see
it's a
how
good
it
one.
pans out. So what do you do when a hire doesn't work out?
You got to give them a reasonable chance. Like I see a lot of people, especially like first-time business owners, it's their first hire. It's like if you're not giving someone 90 days, especially if you're like just figuring it out on the fly, you need to give this poor person a chance. Right? Like when someone's cutting in 40 days, sometimes it's super frustrating because it's very clear like there was not a proper integration. So if it's really the wrong fit after 90 days, then cut your losses because it's really expensive to make the wrong hire. If you make the wrong hire, it's often 30% of their expected first-year salary and your time and your money, and of course the opportunity cost of not hiring the right person to begin with, right? So cut the losses, but if you don't have proper training and procedures, like there's nothing that can save it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. I guess, based off this last 15 minutes here, you're clearly an expert at all of this. So I guess one thing we glanced over earlier was how when you joined Client Ascension, you 7x pretty quickly and grew into a 7-figure business yourself. I guess talk to me about, because you know way more about hiring than we do. Like, I guess what did you get the most out of there and why did that lead to pretty quick exponential growth?
I mean, not to like toot my own horn here, but obviously I've built many successful businesses beforehand. So this was for me very much an investment of I need to pick up the speed on this because part of it was like the political situation. I knew there was momentum. And part of it was because it was such a unique thing. I'm like, I'm not BSing when I'm like, okay, someone is like really a lot better than what you're going to get from a traditional place. So a lot of it was like speed and then just motivation. Like these guys are going to keep me accountable. From that, I would say just being able to bounce ideas off has been extremely valuable. I've been to my fair share of coaching calls. I've done my one-on-ones, but just being able to go in the private channel, like this is my thought. Like, just someone give me an unfiltered take. And that has been extremely valuable to the growth. And then I've just, him writing some of the cold email scripts, talking to you about ops, talking to Daniel about my just general offer and kind of tweaking that here and there. It's been a very cumulative effect. It's hard to pinpoint like one specific thing, like I press this button and this worked, but it's just, a lot of people too, like, I wasn't bullshitting around. Like I invested and I was like, I'm making this work and it's going to be it's going to make a ton of money. And it was just that extra kick.
Yeah, I feel like that's it mostly is the motivation, the accountability, and then kind of that on-demand team to just bounce ideas off of, especially if I know that you have, pretty close partners there, but are you technically...
No, I don't have any partners anymore. I
Gotcha.
removed myself from that and then joined Client Ascension. Yeah.
I want to talk about the marketing side of your business because I feel like you have a really intent-based offer. And what I mean by that is if someone's not looking to hire, they're just not a good fit for you at that time. Like they have to be actively hiring to pay you for your services. So how do you stay top of mind for people? Obviously, you're going to say Twitter ads because I get hit with them every day. But how do you
Twitter ads rip?
How do you stay top of mind for someone that isn't necessarily looking to hire right now, but when they are, you want to be the number one option for them once they need somebody?
So you'll like this stat. Out of the cold email calls booked, I would say roughly 80 to 90% do not even respond. So out of all the cold emails we send, the people who actually respond and want resumes, they want samples, the call booked rate is low. 80 to 90% of our successful cold email conversions have been people that just booked a call, showed up, and were just ready. And I've been shocked how easy it is. It is you're hot or you're not offer. Either you're desperate and you want somebody. And then, of course, I got to give props to Steven, who made my VSL. Like, I get people from cold email all the time. They come on, and they're like, I saw your VSL. This seems so good. And there was a few times after I put that live, I was not ready for how easy it was. Like, here's a cold email person. I haven't talked to them. They haven't responded. They're just like going through the process. And they're like, okay, yeah, like, what's the invoice? Like, how are you going to send it? And I'm just like having to recalibrate myself to the point like, whoa.
Shit, I was ready for a 15-minute discovery and a pitch
I was
and
ready
some
for this to be a
objection
30-minute call. And it's like, you're just ready after 10, and for big upfront fees too. It's just, if someone's ready, they're ready. So as far as, what was the question?
How do you stay top of mind for people so that when they are ready to hire, you're the person they come to?
No, it's because when a business owner is truly stressed and at the limit, they know when it's time. And then when that person is, I don't want to say they're desperate, but they know. And they know, like, a lot of people have hired from the traditional places and they've had a bad experience. So that makes it really simple. If they're seeing my ads, and obviously I've got an email list, I'm constantly, retargeting people, hitting people up with the email sequence. They're ready, man. I would say, like, a lot of our calls, it's like we're taking orders more than selling.
Yeah, I feel like when you have an intent-based offer like that, it becomes even more important to be omnipresent.
Yeah.
Like you said, you're tweeting a lot. You have Twitter ads. You have your email list. You have cold emails running. You have all these different traffic sources. So when the timing is right, makes your life a lot easier.
Correct. And I mean, I'm even at the point where I'm like, is it even worth it to manage the inboxes? Because I look at the numbers and I'm like, most of the calls are coming from people who never respond. So just send in mass and don't even worry about the responses. I'm like on that edge. I've looked at it and I'm like, I might as well just rip 100 boxes and not even manage them. Like, just let them sit and do absolutely nothing. And I'm probably going to make that decision, actually.
That's super dope. And one thing that you've done extremely well is manage both sides of the equation, which is sales and fulfillment. And it's not always pretty, right? It's not always easy to kind of keep a balance, but I've seen a lot of business owners early on where the sales start to click, meaning people want what they have to sell. Their lead gen's getting them results, and there's a lot of demand. And as soon as they put in a couple of clients, the fulfillment breaks, operations take a stop, and they have to shut off the sales machine, which is probably like the biggest mistake you can make.
Yeah, horrible cycle.
Biggest mistake, because sales and marketing, I feel like it's all momentum. Like, it takes so long to build it up to the point where it's producing results, and as soon as you shut it off, you almost have to start from zero again. And so how are you able to manage all of the demand on the marketing and sales side back on the fulfillment and the operations side?
Let me talk real briefly. We get on calls a lot with people like, I'm looking to hire, but I just need one more client. And I tell them, like, this is the biggest, you're about to completely just screw yourself, because as soon as you get one more client and you get stuck fulfilling for that client, you're going to stop your sales, you're going to stop your marketing. And guess what? You're going to be at zero. You're going to fulfill that client. And then you have to start from zero with your sales and marketing again. And more than likely, by the time you get that rolling again, you're going to churn.
Yeah.
And you're going to be in the same boat. Whereas if you just sucked it up and had some balls and hired someone to do the fulfillment, you'd be fine. You'd figure it out. right? And it's like, just you have to go. Business rewards people who take risks. So making a hire, saying I'm going to actually, support this person, I'm going to be responsible for their livelihood to a certain extent, is ballsy. You have to have the courage to do that. So that's what I tell people. Like, don't get stuck in that cycle of fulfilling and then you stop and you have to start again. But as far as me, like, for example, like with marketing, or even like what you guys do at KnowledgeX with cold email outreach, like, it is hard maybe to replace it's hard to replace Christian here.
It's fucking so hard.
It's hard to find a better copywriter, right? I mean, whereas me, it was easy. I'm like, people, I don't speak fluent Russian or Ukrainian. I'm good enough in some ways, but I don't. It's way better to have a local person reaching out in the local language and explaining everything, and I step in as needed. Way better. I mean, like, the girls are way better at it than I am now. Like, this is not even close. So for me, it was easy. Like, I'm not going to handle reaching out to 5 people, talking to them, explaining everything. That is nowhere near a good use of my time. Whereas if I was a web design agency or a cold email agency, it would be harder to let go of, this is the design, this is the cold email.
The creative.
I'm honestly curious, for me, not even for the, like, obviously the audience, but I'm curious to hear what you have to say about, like you said, replacing a creative role. Like, how can you structure it enough so that, like, for me, it's like, if I just hand off, like, we have our copywriter Niall, and I work with him constantly on just getting better with the process, but, like, how could you structure it so that there's less room for human input on a creative thing, right? Because you want to let the person use their own creative inputs, but you don't want it to be so open-ended that it's hard to dictate the outcome.
So I think with creative people, everyone has an inflated ego. Right, so you have to let go of the ego, and someone might be just as good as you. It just might not be the same way you do it. So that's a big part of it. The biggest thing I can say with creative hires is that people go through this whole horrible process with portfolios, where it's like, here's the resume, here's the portfolio, and you dig through every single piece of work trying to find the right thing. The best thing you can do is go to that video editor, that designer, that web person, and say, here's what I need. Send me your most relevant piece of work. And all of a sudden, the initiative is on them, and they might have something hidden that's not in their portfolio that is the perfect fit. So this is something I tell every time. We've done like 8 short form video editors this month. Oh, wow. And I'm like, tell the people to send their most relevant piece of work. Do not go through their whole portfolio, because that just makes a big mess of things. So, like, as a copywriter, Christian, what I would say is, here is my typical client. Send me your most relevant piece of work about this.
I'm more so saying, like, once you have someone on board, how do you manage them to allow them to stay creative, but also keeping them in a set process so that the work is more stream? I don't know. It's, like, hard to explain.
Can you articulate your own process, though?
Yeah, I can, but there comes a point where it's like, it's not something like, hey, these are the things you have to do. It's like, here's the point you're at. You have to come up with a piece of copy that is fully based on your own inputs and creative, and not so much from what I can teach you, right? Like, that's the point where they have to use their own intuition and get it on paper.
If they have the framework and they're good enough, they should be able to get close, right?
Yeah.
But I think the biggest part is that at some point if you really want to grow, you have to relinquish that final control.
Yeah.
Like, and the question is, like, is the client going to be happy? Because there's a big difference between what makes you, the creative type, happy and like, this is perfect, versus what makes a client happy. Like, sometimes, clients are perfectly happy with, I don't want to say average results, but they don't know the difference between 99 and 98%, right? So if you would usually book 9 calls and it books them 8, is anyone really going to be upset about that?
No, I get it. Yep.
It's a control thing, man. Like, it really is. It's tough.
I like the ego thing too, because I feel like I'm not like a creative at heart. I'm more of like the ops guy, like more structure, but like everyone's married to their own way of doing things. And especially with like cold email scripts, it's like, oh, this is the way I write cold emails. This is the strategy I use. And it's like, you almost have to let go and have people introduce new ways of doing it and not stick to the script as much.
Yeah.
Like, you have to allow for creative freedom for them to actually thrive in a role like that.
No, it's true, man. I mean, I don't have anything else to add to that. It's true. You have to let people who are the creative types, and they're very different than the ops types, right? Totally different. You have to allow them some sort of creative control.
Yeah. So my question with this topic is, obviously, someone goes to you for a hire, they're getting someone from Ukraine, that person's fully remote. There's been a lot of talk recently with bigger companies and corporations of getting back to the office culture. And that's not super relevant to small businesses like us that fully rely on remote work. But I guess what are some practical ways that remote businesses can build culture online and through, Zoom calls, Slack? Like, how can you almost emulate the office experience fully online?
I think the big thing is you want people who don't want to come to an office. Like, that's the big thing. Some people actually do prefer going to an office on some level. What nobody likes is having to be there for that amount of time. Yeah. So someone who's just enthusiastic in general about a remote job, that's obviously the first start. Like, personally, like, I love Ukraine. I love the Ukrainian people. Like, I know individual things about all my employees. And I make this, like, clear. Like, this is not just a work relationship. Like, I want to know something personal about you. And I ask that in interview questions. Like, nothing about your career, nothing about business. Tell me something about you. Like, I don't care what it is. It can be anything. And that's how I kind of started off. And then, obviously the team's getting bigger and bigger now. I don't have time to do like weekly one-on-ones, but, I actually ask, like, how are you doing? Like, how is your life? And that's how I try to bridge that gap. We're putting on a team building event this summer in Europe. Everyone's going to fly into the same city, and we're all going to hang out for a weekend and do a few things. So that's kind of how we're kind of trying to counter it as much as we can. But for the most part, my whole team wants to work remote. So that makes it a little easier. But we do twice a week meetings, and we talk a lot. It's an active place. Like, our channels we're busy for sure.
Yeah,
that helps.
And like, how do you conduct yourself on these meetings? Because I feel like meeting culture nowadays is like very unproductive without good structure. So how would you advise someone as like a manager or an executive, CEO, founder, whatever, to carry themselves in a meeting with a bunch of team members?
I typically just have a list. So as the week goes on, I go to my executive assistant, Victoria, and I just voice note her, like, I want to talk about this on Thursday's meeting. And she writes it all down. I get the list on Thursday morning, and then I go through those bullet points, and then we do a round robin. And I say, like, hey, Anna, like, are you stuck on anything? Are you good? I'm good. Okay. Kate, are you stuck on anything? Oh, I'm good. Okay. Maybe someone's stuck on something. We all talk through it. Input's always valued. And then I would say, I've met a few of them in person. Most of my team now I haven't met in person, unfortunately. But like Kate, I hired in person in Kiev, so obviously I knew her on a face-to-face level. I've met a few, Sophia as well, who's my oldest CSM. So I just know stuff about them. Like, and then I'll ask, like, hey, are you good with your parents? Like, is your sister all right? Like, what's the situation with your family? And that's easy for me now because we all have family in Ukraine. So it's really easy to just be like, hey,
there's that common thread.
Yeah, how your parents doing? Like, is there anything I can do? And I would do anything for any of them. If any of them needed like help getting a parent out or needed like a salary fronted, like, do it in a heartbeat. And then of course I usually, after those meetings, keep someone after. I'll say like, Victoria, Valentina, you stay on for 5 minutes. I need to discuss something with you. And then I'll discuss whatever business thing with them. And then maybe I'll even kick one of them off and then ask something personal to the last one. So that's, I keep up with a lot of their actual personal situations. It's small enough now I can actually manage that, but it won't be in the future.
Something else, I guess for the audience is, I feel like, are all of your hires female? Like, are there any males in the picture, or are they?
My sales guy, Greg, is from Delaware, and he's obviously a male. And then my video editor, Bogdan, is male. Everyone else is female.
So if
Does that have something to do with Ukraine?
If you're
though?
a male in Ukraine right now, like, are you having to fight? Like, what's the deal there?
I don't know anyone that's actually been like officially drafted, but you can't leave the country, as I attested to earlier. And then, so in Ukraine, I would definitely say like the accent matters for sure when you're hiring overseas, and the male accent can definitely be a little bit harsher. And I think like just the roles like customer success manager as well as like recruiter, that is typically more of just a probably female orientated position. But like a video editor, I didn't have any pickings for females, so it all just kind of depends.
On the type of role, yeah.
Yeah, it just depends on the role.
That makes sense.
I would say too, like the talent in Ukraine, at least, there's a lot of developers, a lot of programmers, and you're not going to find like any very, very few like female developers where it's going to be male. Whereas with these other roles that need like strong English, it's primarily, I'd say, the females that speak a little bit better English overall. So that makes it a little bit easier.
Gotcha. Switching gears a little bit, you mentioned that you just recently had your first kid. You're also a super busy guy. Congrats on that, by the way. I guess a lot of younger guys like us were very much in that hustle culture, and we're probably like, that's the last thing I need right now is a kid while I'm putting in, 10, 12-hour days. It seems like you're doing both with like the super long days, also the kid. Tell me how that's been so far.
My wife's great. That makes it easier. It's certainly not easy, though, but it's also the greatest fuel I've ever had. like it by far the most motivating thing ever business wise is that, oh, I have to provide for this little kid, right? It is way better than anything else that I've ever had as far as like wanting to wake up and just go. Like, you just do it. You have to. So no, it's been fantastic. She's just turned 5 months, and she's even like really trying to speak a few words. Like, she seems to be just very bright, very fun. But it's very nice to unplug at the end of the day and just like sit with her in my lap and kind of just enjoy the process.
She's gonna be bilingual.
Dude, she already speaks more languages than me. She's already got Ukrainian down, English. You know, obviously she'll understand Russian too. It's very similar.
That's crazy.
She'll probably learn.
What's the thing when you're first like learning a language? You can learn two at once like way easier than you or I trying to pick it up.
Dude, I mean, I have friends in Ukraine. It's like their kids. You don't even have to try. If you have one person who's speaking one language and then the other person speaking another, they know it by like 3 or 4 years old. Like, you know, my baby will be speaking Ukrainian, Russian, English, and probably Italian by the time she's 5. You know, because we're gonna move to Italy. Like, she's already way ahead of me.
Are you gonna try to learn Italian?
No, I'm not.
I feel like my experience being over in Italy a couple times is that you don't really need to, like, especially in the major cities.
I mean, I'm gonna sound like a typical, very arrogant American, but I'm a native English speaker, and I'm probably okay. I speak decent Russian, I would say, but now obviously everyone in Ukraine doesn't want to speak Russian. Before it was like everyone would speak Russian. It was just it was accepted. Like, you could speak either one, and now it's like they want to speak Ukrainian. Of course, my Ukrainian's horrible, so I got to start from zero on that. But yeah, no, the kids, they learn fast, man. They learn really fast.
Dude, I'm interested to hear, like, kind of to segue out of the episode, is like, we could talk about the business as well, like long-term vision and where that's kind of headed. But like, I always like to go back to like Ukraine, Russia. Like, what do you think is gonna, like, what's next for that? Is that gonna go on for a very long time? Is it coming to an end? Like, what does that look like?
I mean, what's today? 26 now, right?
Yeah, so it's been
a year as of 2 days ago. Honestly, it's exactly where it started. Like, Russia has said we have a few of these regions, but they don't fully have control. It's almost exactly where it was, I would say. From a physical, like, military strategy standpoint, nothing has really changed very much after a year. I think there's a lot of incentives by people in this country to keep that going, both from a distraction as well as a monetary perspective. So I think it's going to just keep going for a while.
That military-industrial complex is something. They're going to try to keep it going for as long as possible.
Money printing.
Yeah, is Zelensky is he viewed as much of a hero as kind of like the American media paints him out to be?
I'm not going there.
Okay. I had to ask.
My opinion, I'm not going to share my opinion.
No, more so, not even like your opinion, just like with the Ukrainian people, is he a super beloved leader? That's what I'm getting at.
Yes, right after, for sure.
Yeah.
Now, I think there's maybe a little fatigue.
Some second guessing.
Some fatigue.
That's what I was wondering. Is it like somebody that everybody there rallied behind? Because I know that from, once again, you know, everybody has their agenda here. But from the U.S. perspective, it was like, okay, he is a man of the people. He's on the front lines. Like, this guy, like,
he's not on the front lines. He's sitting in his freaking palace, eating caviar and drinking vodka.
Yeah. Okay. That was basically my question there.
You don't have to share your opinion.
All that. Yeah. No, whatever. He ain't on the front lines. Those are all photo shoots. You know, like, when it all started, they had the mayor of Kiev, like, with a giant machine gun. All of it's all propaganda.
Who are the boxers that are Ukrainian?
Klitschko.
Yeah, the ghost of Kiev.
Those guys are legends.
That guy wasn't real.
That wasn't real. Yeah.
It's crazy, dude. So on a business side of things, like, where is HireUA headed? And it's super relevant, right? Because I feel like, yeah, having a daughter is like really mission driven. But do you feel the same way about like the nature of your business, like being centered around Ukraine and having a way to help these people?
No, I mean, obviously, I don't like the politicians, but I love the people. I love the culture. Like, that was my home, right? So I chose to live there. I could go anywhere in the world, and I chose there. So to be able to help people is extremely rewarding to me. Obviously, I love my team. They're fantastic. And, you know, most of the people we place, too, are just good people. Like, we're helping good people get good jobs, and then we're helping good business owners here get good people because they don't want to pay the prices here. Understandable. So, yeah, like, mission-based, it's very rewarding. Like, more than anything else I've ever done, for sure.
Yeah, with one of our companies, we work with a couple of Ukrainians, and they're awesome people. Like, just really solid, smart. Yeah, they're just awesome.
Yeah, we got a hire from you. Inbox
you
manager.
have a hire
she
from
absolutely
us.
crushes
Katerina,
it.
yeah.
Okay, one last question actually, because this is super like trendy and relevant. Is we hired someone from you, obviously, and she's great, inbox manager, which just means she's going through our emails and responding to people that respond to our cold emails. One of the things that we implemented to almost like supercharge her skills and talent is giving her access and SOPs on how to use ChatGPT. How relevant is that to your workforce and just hiring people overseas?
It depends. Like, I think creating content, like I've tried it. I mean, I've tried to put AI into like write my tweets, and it's not there. It's just not working. But stuff that doesn't matter, like job descriptions for us, like absolutely. And I don't know what you guys are using her for exactly, but yeah, responses, I could totally see that working because, yeah, I can see that working. But like actual
the
creative
English
stuff,
gap.
no.
It's like
Yeah.
the small English gap. Like the way they write their responses might not be like perfectly.
Yeah, I mean, you can just
line.
prompt it, like, take this response, here's the premise, and please rewrite it, and it'll give you exactly what you need.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't see why you wouldn't be utilizing that, like, in your situation, for sure.
Yeah, I feel like for the creative side of things, it's not really for the actual finished product content. It's more so like, hey, give me 10 topics to talk
logistics.
about X, Y, Z.
It's
Yeah.
just, yeah.
Yeah, to riff
Yeah.
on.
Yeah.
Just idea. It's like an idea generator. But super cool, man. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Last question for our audience out there that's listening. If they're hiring or they just want advice on hiring, obviously follow Kyle and his content. But where can our audience find you, follow you, and learn more about working with HireUA, or where to buy your olive oil?
You can go to seloolive.com for the olive oil, and then, of course, just hire-ua.com and book a call with the sales team. They'll take care of you from there, and then it's pretty much handed off to the Ukrainians. I mean, I hate to say it, but it's so cliche, but yeah, I trust my team, and that's, to me, is like the biggest thing is like when you get in that Slack channel, I might say hello, but after that, it's handed off to them, and that is, to me, is like the perfect example. Like, this is what you're getting.
Awesome, man. Thanks
Love
so
that.
much
Thanks
for
for
coming
having
on,
me,
bro.
guys.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate it, man. Thank you.